Hi everybody, it's Rebecca Virginia, and today I'm bringing you 6 brand new spring DIYs. All of these crafts use supplies from the Dollar Tree. First up, I am going to show you how to DIY one of the plastic fences from the Dollar Tree and turn it into this beautiful farmhouse lantern. Here are the supplies that you'll need. As I mentioned in the intro, the main supply for this DIY is going to be the ornate plastic fences that you can find at the Dollar Tree. I used these miter shears I got off Amazon. They're my favorite. They cut through everything really nicely. And I cut out 4 of these fence panels, and these are going to be the sides of our farmhouse lantern. So the first step, I'm going to be painting them all white. I'm going to be doing this to the front as well as the backs of the fences. This is very beautiful. I've seen a couple of people do this. They kept it black, and I thought that came out really, really nicely. I wanted to go for more of a farmhouse rather than modern look, which is why I'm going in with the white paint. But if you wanted to make it a little bit easier on yourself, it would definitely be faster and easier if you just kept these black. And I'm going over it again. I did 2 coats of the white paint. I only did 1 coat of the white paint on the back side, but on the front, especially for the front panel and the side panels, I made sure to do another coat. The Dollar Tree is always coming out with these different shadow boxes for various seasons. This one is from the fall time, but again, they come out with them for Easter, for Valentine's Day, all of the time. They usually just change what's on the inside. And this is going to be the base for our lantern. And just to make sure that you don't see any of that buffalo check when I fill it with florals and the candle, I am just going in with a coat of white paint. Now, to really dirty up and make our lantern look more farmhouse, I went in with a dry brushing technique and a bit of gray paint. I'm using the color Elephant by Waverly. That is my go-to gray paint, and that is just going to distress our fence posts as we turn it into the lantern. And you could omit the shadow box that I have in the center and just hot glue the edges of the lantern together. But using this shadow box just made it way easier. And also you'll see in a moment when I start to add the candle and the greenery and the florals that are going inside the lantern, it keeps everything nice and compact and in one place. Whereas if you didn't have that, you would have to pick up and move everything individually instead of having it all nice and closed into the lantern. The only downside of filling the lantern up after I had already hot glued the fence posts is it was a little bit hard, and I kind of had to stick my fingers in the sides of the fence post to make sure that the greenery was placed nicely. But I picked some sprigs of eucalyptus that I already had on some floral picks. I used a candle from, of course, the Dollar Tree and some more spring florals from the Dollar Tree. I have really been loving the purples, especially the lavender picks this year, so I used a majority of those. I've been loving using purple florals as decor this spring, so for this DIY, I knew I wanted to use a lot. Here's everything you'll need to recreate it. I love the galvanized tins from the Dollar Tree. I think they are really beautiful as is, but of course I had to DIY it a bit. I took a strip of burlap from a large bundle of burlap fabric that I had, and I just cut it into a strip and then hot glued it down the center of my tin. And over that, I had a welcome galvanized sign, so I'm going ahead and hot gluing that on top before moving on to the sides of our tin. These are just going to be decorative handles. I took a bit of the nautical rope from the Dollar Tree and just hot glued it onto the sides. If you wanted this to actually work as handles, I would recommend adding a bit of E6000 glue just to make sure that they really stay in place. And now is the fun part, or at least my favorite part, and that is arranging all of the florals in our tin. I put down 3 blocks of floral foam and just held those in place with a bit of hot glue. And then I went in with my favorite purple picks from the Dollar Tree. This is going to be up high, so I didn't have to fill my tin with any Spanish moss or anything to hide the floral foam. But if you are going to have this at eye level, then I would definitely recommend filling it in with some either burlap or Spanish moss to make sure you don't see that floral foam peeking out. The next spring DIY is a really quick and easy way to bring a bit of greenery into your home. Here are all of the supplies that you'll need to recreate this DIY. The Dollar Tree came out with these arches a little bit ago, and I absolutely love them. It took a while for them to show up in my Dollar Tree, but they did this fall. So if you haven't seen them yet in your store, keep hoping, because it might just be like mine and you might be getting them a bit later. I love the gray color of the arches, but I wanted to distress it and give it more of that farmhouse feel. So I'm going in with my white Waverly paint and pretty heavy-handedly painting all over our gray sign. I also took off the Our Family Gathers Here sign that was on the center of this arch. It was just hot glued on, so I just went ahead and peeled it off, and it came off pretty easy. Next, I'm taking some greenery from a floral pick, and I'm going to be creating a wreath with it. I took a pipe cleaner and just made it into a circle formation, kind of to act as a guide for me. Originally, I thought that I might be hot gluing the greenery on top of it, but the greenery actually held its shape very well without having to do that, so I really just used the pipe cleaner as a guide. And once I made it all the way around with my wreath, I wanted it to be a bit more full. It was looking a little bit sparse, so I went over the top of it with another ring of greenery just to make sure that my wreath was a bit more bountiful and full. Then, as the last step, I made a little jute bow and just hot glued that to the top of the wreath before hot gluing it to the top of the arch. These glass milk bottles were such an amazing find at my Dollar Tree that I knew I had to use them for a DIY, but wasn't sure what for. This spring, I got the inspiration to use them in this farmhouse DIY. Here's what you need to recreate it. If you spot these milk bottles in your Dollar Tree, you have got to pick them up. I found mine in the glass section, but I know some others have found it in their Crafter Square section. These are such gorgeous bottles with such amazing detail. I was shocked that I found them at the Dollar Tree instead of Hobby Lobby or even Target. These are really going to be the main stars of this DIY. So to highlight them, I first covered it entirely in some white chalk paint, even getting the top of the milk bottle. And then, of course, to distress it, I'm going in with some sandpaper and rubbing it along the front section of our milk bottle, as well as the sides and a bit on the top. Chalk paint works really well on glass because it gives a very nice matte finish, and that matte finish paired with the sandpaper just gives a perfect vintage rustic look. Then to finish off the milk bottle, I added in 2 picks of some of my favorite florals that I found at the Dollar Tree this year. They really knocked it out of the park, especially with their lavender picks. And as the final accent, I had some of this really beautiful lace ribbon from the Crafters Square section of the Dollar Tree. So loosely and fairly messily, I just tied it onto the front of our milk bottles. I saw a version of this bunny DIY on Pinterest and had to try my hand on it. I just thought it was so cute using the little clay pot to balance on the bunny's head. Here are all of the supplies you'll need to recreate it. Originally, I thought this DIY would be so cute using the natural color of the clay pot and the green moss bunnies from the Dollar Tree, but sadly the moss bunnies are made out of styrofoam and very lightweight and just could not handle the clay pot. It kept toppling over, so I ended up using one of these clay bunny figurines, which is also from the Dollar Tree. For the clay pot, since it was going on the white bunny, I thought that it had to match, so I ended up painting that white and then distressing it with some of this brighter lavender colored paint. I did tie a little twine bow on the side of my rabbit, and then I started filling in the clay pot. I put a bit of floral foam in, and then, no surprise, went back in with those gorgeous lavender picks from the Dollar Tree and just filled up the clay pot. Next is a little bit tricky. You have to play around and really try to balance it on the bunny's head, but once you get it perfect, I actually ended up putting it a little bit closer to the front of the bunny's head than I would have thought, but that is how I was able to get it to balance on our bunny. I went ahead and hot glued the clay pot to the top of our bunny's head. This DIY is a quick and easy one for those who may not have the time to fully commit to crafting. You can use any frame that you want for this DIY. This is one that I've used a couple times from the Dollar Tree that I have distressed with a bit of white paint. And then we're going to be using these free printables. I found these on Pinterest and I will link them down below. All you have to do is enter your email on this woman's blog and she emails you a whole file full of really gorgeous spring printables. I loved the bicycle, but I really liked the Happy Easter one too, and I ended up going with this one. It's a super simple way to bring the spring and Easter spirit into your home. Thanks so much for watching. Until next time, keep searching, keep creating.